Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Once again, I'm your host, Dean Simon. And before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. We are still on the road to 2,000 subs, so if that's a journey that you feel like joining along on, please consider pressing that big red subscribe button below. And also turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. And the first is, not really an update, but just something that's going to be in the way for the Bucks on this trip that just keeps getting more and more grueling, and that's something that we'll get into in this episode. But the next bout for the Bucks, continuing on this East, East Coast kind of, it's just a slaughterhouse really going against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And though they might not be the most amazing team in the Eastern Conference in the grand scheme of things, it's the Philadelphia 76ers, and then it'll be the Detroit Pistons and who else? The Miami Heat and the New York Knicks, and then the Portland Trailblazers are just thrown in there as just an added, just try and get past them as a really great up and coming young team in the Western Conference. But throughout this next stretch, of course, it will be without Giannis Antetokounmpo for arguably the most important stretch of the Bucks' first 20% of the season so far. And this upcoming game against the 76ers is going to present a lot of difficulties, specifically with Giannis being missing in action. And I feel like most of it is going to have to do with going against a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who can just, and I said in the last episode, just can get to the basket whenever he wants to. And then he also has that kind of superpower ability where he could just stop on a dime whenever he sees fit and step back for a three. He has this kind of like a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander-esque ability to just completely stop his momentum and step back for a three. It's uncanny. It's super impressive. But, we're not going to dote on that for too long, even though he is still around second or third in the league in scoring at about 32 points a game. He is really taking that massive leap with Joel Embiid out for yet another, full season, what it's looking to be, or, maybe yet another half a season at least. So he's really taking that leap. But the biggest deal for this team, it's going to be Tyrese Maxey, but it's also just going to be their collective athleticism and talent from their guard spots with him, with VJ Edgecombe, with Jared McCain actually now coming back, and he's going to be playing, about probably 14 to 16 minutes in this one because he's still rehabbing from an injury. And it's going to present a lot of difficulties for the AJ Greens and the Gary Trent Juniors, maybe not the Ryan Rollins, but other guys that are on the perimeter. It's going to be a very, very tall task for the other guys to kind of come in and put together a team effort to stop the perimeter attackers and rim drivers that are going to be Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, just guys brimming with talent and athleticism. It's going to be a very, very tough battle, but also something that I think is going to be a little bit underrated kind of in the fold of everything is that the Bucks so far this year have been the worst rebounding team in the NBA, and obviously they've been letting up uh, way too many offensive rebounds to any of their opponents so far, and they'll be going against one of the greatest rebounders in NBA history, Andre Drummond. Even though, of course, he's well past his prime, he's still going to make a big difference on the boards, as you would imagine. But also, the scary thing about Andre Drummond so far this year is that he's developing a three-point shot, and it's not just like some crazy thing to say that if you see Andre Drummond in the corner, you can leave him alone. No, you can't. Not this year, at least. He's shooting around 35 to 37% on threes this year, and he's becoming a legit option just as a guy that can space the floor for these guys like VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey to get even more of open lanes towards the basket. It's, really scary combination when you get a, not saying that Andre Drummond has this much pull on whether they win or not, but combining the VJ Edgecombe, he's having a great rookie year so far. Obviously, started off on another level and kind of quieted down since then. But Tyrese Maxey having legit an MVP caliber ascension, and then VJ Edgecombe coming out of the gates amazing. And it's going to be a very, very tough matchup, especially if they can continue to space the floor as well as they have. But a few things that the Milwaukee Bucks have going for them, surprisingly, because Giannis is going to be out and maybe there's not many positive ways that you can look at this. I feel like the one thing that you can point to is that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be coming off of a back to back. They just took a loss against the Toronto Raptors, who have beaten the Bucks in blowout fashion earlier this year, and now they're starting to really take shape as one of the kind of sneaky dark horse contenders in the Eastern Conference at 10-5. They've been excellent, really ever since they laid the smackdown on the Bucks in the process. But they're coming off a back to back against a really tough opponent in Toronto that kind of wore them down both physically and actually now that I think about it, more just physically with their guys like Brandon Ingram and RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes and Jakob Pertl, these big bruising guys that can get down low very easily and create their own looks very easily, by way of brute force essentially. That's going to be very tough for them to kind of bounce back from, and maybe you can kind of depend on them having tired legs or maybe not being fully into it when they go against the Bucks, even without Giannis. And I feel like the way that you can really capitalize on that is if you push the pace more than you ever have. And of course, this is something we talked about in the last episode with Giannis out and him not going to be having as much of the responsibility. You really just need to push this ball up and down the floor, get Ryan Rollins going coast to coast, and have Miles Turner pull up for trail threes and get Kuzma into the offense, just rolling to the basket. Have Ryan Rollins take his off the dribble threes and also slash as much as possible. Just get this semi transition and full on transition offense to where it needs to be. And I feel like the Bucks might have a good shot in this. And also the fact that Joel Embiid, he's still been dealing with injury stuff, obviously, and he's been kind of in and out, though he has played a little bit more with kind of a minutes restriction. There's no guarantee that Joel Embiid's going to play in this next game. And also Paul George, who just made his season debut the other night, he might not be there as well. He's also dealing with injury things. He didn't play against the Raptors the other night. So they're also dealing with injury misfortune over there, and it'll be to the Bucks' benefit if a guy like Paul George is missing. And I feel like someone that could benefit the most from that is Kyle Kuzma, who I see being one of the Bucks' two main X factors in this one. One being Kuz, because just we've seen how consistent he has been so far this season in most spots on the offensive end, and that his defensive intensity has been there the entire year, and he's really been a revelation on that side of the floor as well. So if Kuzma can take advantage of matchups against kind of the smaller guards like the Maxis, the Edgecombs, the McCains, and because the 76ers don't really have that great of wing depth, maybe they'll have Trendon Watford come in and guard him for a possession or two, or maybe Quentin Grimes is going to be his biggest kind of adversary, or Justin Edwards, or someone of that caliber. Kyle Kuzma can be put in a good position to kind of take advantage of size mismatches. And Ryan Rollins, he can really catch the 76ers guards off guard by kind of taking it to their chests. Again, the guys like the Edgecombs, the Maxis, Ryan Rollins can really assert himself as the Bucks' main scoring option, essentially, with no Giannis, because we know that Miles Turner benefits from playmakers like Giannis and like Ryan Rollins to get his catch and shoot threes and, to catch lobs at the basket every so often and, just catch passes in the dunker spot. And so Ryan Rollins is really going to be the first option for this team. It's actually incredible how we've got to this point with now no Giannis, and of course KPJ has been hurt the entire year so far, that Ryan Rollins is really going to get his real shot to prove that on a given night like this, with the situation being right, he can be the best player on the floor if he shuts down Tyrese Maxey on one end and scores another efficient 25 points on the other end and shoots 9 of 13 again and hits 50% of his threes and keeps his turnovers low. Ryan Rollins can have a real shot at being the best player on the floor in a matchup against Tyrese Maxey, who is, again, top 3 in scoring so far this year, and just has not really taken it easy on anyone. If Ryan Rollins can do his work on both sides of the floor and at least try to contain Tyrese Maxey, slow him down a little bit, then the Bucks could have a really good shot of pulling this one off, despite what anybody else might say. But it will not get any easier from here, this tough road that the Bucks are on, because the next matchup will be against the red hot Detroit Pistons, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference by a pretty decently wide margin to start this year. Of course, Cade Cunningham also playing like an MVP, Jalen Duren playing like an all-star fringe, all-NBA caliber center. They are definitely a very, very scary opponent to be going against, especially on the streak they're on. I think their latest win marks 11 straight. I want to say either 11 or 12 straight. And they've just been playing phenomenal. And there's not really many more positive things that you can say about Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren, not just on the offensive end, but Jalen Duren coming out and just kind of having another evolution as a defender. Isaiah Stewart is amazing defensively around the rim. There are other guys like Duncan Robinson are really, he's really taken over that spot for Malik Beasley extremely well. And despite them missing guys like Dennis Schroeder, their, intensity defensively throughout the entirety, up and down their lineup, it completely has remained intact. And those guys have just been playing amazing basketball. So this stretch will not slow down. It'll be the Pistons, and then at some point, I forget the actual order of the schedule, but it'll be the Pistons, it'll be the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks, and the Portland Trailblazers also featuring in this slate of games. And then the Bucks will get a chance to kind of rest with games against the Nets and teams of that matter. But for right now, they're just going to be trudging through this next bit of the schedule without Giannis, and it's going to be really rough. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning into yet another episode of Bucks Latest. Once again, I've been Dean Simon, and before you go, please leave that like, leave that comment down below, and subscribe, and also turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on the next episode and many more to come. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.